you got what we mind me. Today you got what we mind me. Today you got what we mind me. Today.
So starting off with the specialist, and we are using the demolitionist. Reason for that, of course, is because of crisis response, the talent that you get within the specialist. You seasoned veterans will already know this, but you know, we still get the odd new player coming in. So that's why we're running the demolitionist. You can choose another specialization if you'd like, but I don't know, crisis response is too good to let go. Crisis response is when you get a refill on your magazine whenever your armor's broken, and as you'll see in the gameplay, this happens multiple times. So now we covered the specialist real quick, let's look at the primary weapon, which we are using, the MP5N. Now the reason I'm using a submachine gun, guys, is because the meta is assault rifles. Let's be real, fair enough, LMGs and submachine guns, yes, they're viable, but everybody is running ARs. And don't get me wrong, I love ARs. I main that weapon. That's my main weapon. It's my favorite. But even I get bored of ARs. And sometimes I feel like I need to use something else to help me improve on my playstyle, because otherwise you get complacent and you just, you play the same way all the time. It's not a good thing. It's good to be able to play all different kinds of play styles. So I switched it up. I've not been back long because I went for a while, but I've come back. I used the AR, it felt too easy, so I went back to the submachine guns and I feel the difference, especially with the range. I do have to get up a lot closer. I can't do those long range beams from across the map, so I'm forced to play a little bit closer in order to, get the full benefit of this weapon. So we are using the MP5N with 22.1k base damage, 808 rounds per minute with 52 in a magazine. The talents we are running are Strained for the 5% critical hit damage, which is gained for every 10% of your armor that is depleted. And we are also rocking Allegro, Stop, Drop and Roll. That is a clutch talent when you're not running much hazard protection. Stop, drop and roll, just roll and it wipes it clean. When it comes to the attachments, we have crit hit damage, we have the extra 20 rounds, negative reload speed, 7% crit chance, and critical hit damage. If you want to go over these attachments in greater detail, guys, pause the video. So with our primary out of the way, we're going to look at our secondary, and you seasoned veterans are going to know all about this. We are running the Merciless as our secondary for its hosted talent. While hosted, landed a shot has a 5% chance to deal 100% damage as explosive damage. So one of those bullets is going to be an explosive bullet. It's going to go off and it's going to proc the damage talent called Spark that we have on our backpacks. I know a lot of you already know this, but we do get the odd new player come around here. So they need this information. Moving on to our sidearm, and of course I'm running the same sidearm as I always am. The double barrel that has the overlap talent, while hosted, gain 5% weapon handling. That's across stability, accuracy and reload speed. So 5% isn't a huge amount, of course, but every little helps. Now with all weapons out of the way, let's move on to the gear, starting off with our Wave and Wear mask, which is our first piece of 3 pieces. And as we all know, Wave and Wear gives us critical hit damage, drone skill power and critical hit chance. The attributes we're running is critical hit chance at 6%, you can get 10% and higher, and then we are running health at near enough 30k health. You can get a higher roll than I actually have on this mask. And then for our talent, we are running the insulated talent for 30% hazard protection, because by God do you need it in this patch. Moving on to our chest piece, our first piece of 2 pieces of Sokolov. Sokolov gives us SMG damage and critical hit damage. The attributes are 7.5% critical hit damage, 50k health, and again you can get a higher roll. The higher the better, the more health the better, because of course it equals more survivability. And then we have a pretty low crit chance roll at 3.5%. You can get a lot higher than that obviously, and if I could get higher I would change an attachment out on my weapon, my primary weapon, for crit damage instead of crit chance. And then we have 8% weapon damage, which isn't a bad roll. And of course we are running Berserk, which just ties in with the whole clutch build. If you want to go over this talent, read it. You don't know it, pause the video to go over it in greater detail. And then we have an offensive mod right here, and of course we're going for that 5% roll on the SMG damage, and if you're lucky you'll get a 1.5 or 1% roll weapon damage along with that. Now onto our second piece of Sokolov, our holster. The attributes we have is 4.5% crit damage, a pretty low roll there. We have 42k health and then 5% crit chance. Both red attributes here could be a lot higher, giving you a lot more damage. We rolled for the talent critical, which gives us an extra 15% critical hit damage. With the holster out of the way, we're now going to move on to our backpack, our second piece of Wave and Wear, which gives us 5% weapon damage, 38k health, 5% critical hit chance. The The talents we are running is Vital for 25 extra health, and then we have Spark. Damaging enemies with skills or explosives grants 15% extra damage for 15 seconds. That's why we are running our secondary as the Merciless for its hosted talent to trigger this damage talent right here. And then for our mod slot, we have a utility slot, which doesn't help this build in any way whatsoever. You can get a Wave and Wear backpack that will give you a red mod slot, and if you're lucky enough to get that, you'll get an extra 5% SMG damage. So with the backpack out of the way, onto the gloves, and we have the perfect clutch gloves right here, the named gloves. We have 8% SMG damage, not a bad roll, can get a lot higher. Then we have 5% critical hit chance. And here is the talent, perfect clutch again. Critical hits restore 25% missing health and repair 2% missing armor. So it's not a major difference over the standard perfect, the standard clutch, as you can see. But believe it or not, in game, you can actually feel the difference. It doesn't look like it when you're reading over stats, but you feel the difference. Now finally, our final piece to this build, our knee pads, and these are so important, especially in this meta right now that is dominated by skill builds, these hybrids, these tank hybrids. We have the Wave and Wear knee pads with 8.5% critical hit chance, and then this talent right here, Cloaked. This talent is so clutch, it's more clutch than clutch. When your armor is depleted, nearby enemy skills are disrupted for 10 seconds, can occur once every 30 seconds. In a skill dominated meta, this works out perfectly. You'll see in many clips, no one's able to use the skills around me. People that pack rush me end up getting dropped one after another because they have to rely on their weapon and actual shooting skills, which a lot of people, as it currently stands, don't really have the greatest of aim, hence why they're using skills to do majority of their damage, and then they just finish you off with their weapon. So this talent is amazing. And then we have our offensive mod slot right here, and of course we went for the 5% SMG damage, 1% weapon damage, and that's it when it comes to the gear. Moving on to the skills. Now believe it or not, this skill right here is actually very important to this build. We are using the Booster Hive. The Booster Hive delivers a stimulant to nearby allies that increase their movement speed and weapons handling and reduces cooldowns. Now a lot of people don't clock onto that part, but reduces cooldowns. When you drop this down, it takes 20 seconds off your cooldowns. Now the second skill we are running is the Defender Drone. Now that has a pretty long cooldown, but if you're constantly dropping, your Hive, that's knocking 20 seconds off after every time it's finished its buff. So you wait for the buff to finish, you drop it again, bang, it'll knock another 20 seconds off, which is great. Like, a lot of people don't actually realize that. They just think people are running the Hive for the extra speed and weapon handling. For me, the main importance of it is obviously reducing the cooldowns to get my drone back a lot quicker because it has such a long cooldown. So these two skills work pretty nicely in sync together. And then over here for the grenade, not many people cover this, running the concussion grenade because it actually does more damage than standard grenade. So you're better off running concussion. That's pretty much it for the build. We're going to now look at these stats, and I'm not going to go through these in major detail. I'm just going to skim over the ones I find to be the most important. So we're going to start off with the weapon stats. As you'll see, 60% crit chance, which of course on a clutch build is a must have. We have 77% critical hit damage. If you look over this build, you'll see there's many places where the crit hit damage could be a lot higher, so we could be hitting a lot harder, and this build does hit harder than my AR build. The only real benefit to the AR build over this SMG build is that we have 100% hazard protection and you have extra range, because as you can see here, 16 on the range. It's an SMG, we are forced to get up close and personal, which we're kind of lucky we have cloaked, because with the meta being so many skill builds, it's good we had that talent to knock out the skills. So literally once you drop that first person, you'll see in the gameplay, once that first person goes down, it's so much easier just to mow through the next 2 or 3 people because they have to rely on their guns and, not their skills. Anyway, moving on to the rest of the stats, we have weapon handling at 5%, all weapon damage bonus at 15%, and what's most important here is the 43% SMG damage, which is nowhere near max rolls. Guys, remember this is a template. This isn't max rolls by any means. You can go over the build and recheck it. which is kind of crazy though, because this build puts out some damage, as you would have seen in the gameplay. Same with survivability. We have 235k health, and we are nowhere near max rolls on the health rolls. I am interested in knowing what the max health would be on this build if we had all the max rolls. If any of you can work that out and let me know down in the comment section below, I'd really appreciate it. I'm just going to skim through these stats real quick. If you want to check them out in greater detail, pause the video. And that's it, guys. That's the build. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Don't forget to smash that like button, as it helps support the channel and it's going to help us grow. If you're new, hit that sub button for lots more Division 2 content. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, Mod Squad.